Welcome back to Cook from the Past. I am Catherine, and today I'm going to be making, well, what most people are trying to do right now is come up with something new to do with leftover turkey. So in the past I made videos using fresh turkey, and this time I'm going to be making 5 more recipes that utilize leftover turkey. And just like everybody else, I have leftover turkey. So what I'm going to be making is turkey tetrazzini, turkey curry on rice, turkey rice casserole, turkey soup, of course, and I am going to do my own invention, which I am calling Thanksgiving dinner pasty. Now, a pasty is a very traditional Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's kind of a northern thing here in the United States. And it's like a hand pie. Sometimes they're a little bit larger, but it's like a pastry with some kind of a savory meat, potatoes, different kinds of things in it. But I decided to do something that's kind of one of those things you see on one of those Food Network type of challenges where you get a bunch of leftovers and you need to make a dish with it. Well, I decided why not make a pasty that includes the ingredients from Thanksgiving dinner. My husband did request that he's had it up to about here with sweet potatoes for now, so he said please don't put sweet potatoes in the pasty. But I am going to include turkey, of course, some dressing, mashed potatoes, a little gravy, and some cranberry sauce. So the first thing I'm going to do on that dish, and that's going to be our dinner tonight, so I'll let you know how that goes. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to be making that pasty. And just on a side note, pasties have been around for a long time, but my grandmother came from England and she called them pasties. And it's the same kind of idea. It's just a pastry type of a crust pie thing with a savory meat in it. So that is what I grew up with my grandmother making those. So it is something from my past, but what I'm doing with it in this version is going to be definitely something that is updated and different. Well, we'll just see how it turns out. So the first thing I need to do is to make the crust. Now you can use a store-bought crust if you want, some of the frozen or chilled packaged pie crust. It comes with 2 pie crusts in a box. You can use that if you want, but cooks in the past didn't have ready-made pie crusts coming from the grocery store. So I'm gonna go ahead and make my pastry by scratch. So welcome and follow along. We'll see how this works out. So I've got 1.5 cups of flour here and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I've got about 6 tablespoons of butter here, and I've cut it into little pieces so it will break up a lot easier when I mix it in with the flour. So when I was in my late teens setting up my first home, I didn't have a lot to work with as far as cooking utensils, and I definitely did not have one of those pastry type blenders, and I definitely did not have a food processor. So my very first pie I made when I was 17 years old, and this is how I cut the butter into the flour, just a couple of knives. So that's how I'm going to do it this time, since I am Cook from the Past. So this is really all you do. You start cutting it in, and that is cold butter, so it's going to take a while. Now after I get to pretty much getting this all incorporated, I am going to possibly add another tablespoon or 2 of the butter, but I will see how it goes. So this is where we're at, and I'll come back as soon as all of this is cut into rice grain size pieces. Still working on it. It takes some doing, but it can be done. And this is going to give me a pastry crust that has no preservatives in it at all. So I'm going to keep at it. So I am finding it easier to, oops, we want this I'm finding it easier to turn this on its side and just work on a little bit of the dough at a time, and it just seems to be working a little bit better that way. I'm working a lot faster than just sort of randomly trying to put the knives through the dough at this point. Just turning it on its side. I did end up putting another 2 tablespoons of butter in there. So it's a full half stick of butter to 1.5 cups of flour and the 1 teaspoon of salt. All right, this is going to be close enough. There's some pieces in here that are bigger than pieces of rice, but I'm not worried about it. It'll all turn out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get started putting in the cold water. Okay, this is very cold water. It's cold tap water, and then I put several ice cubes in there so it would really be cold. So you want cold butter and cold water. That combination is going to help to have a nice flaky crust. And I'm not going to put all the water in. I just put some in a cup, and I'm just going to see how it goes with the dough. Just putting in a little bit at a time. You don't want to overwork it. We're looking for when it just holds together in a ball. You can see we're not there yet. Just a little bit at a time. You can always put more in, but you put too much in, you can't take it back out again. If that were to be the case and you did put a little bit too much in, you can just add a bit more flour, however much, just until you know that it's going to be a ball that holds up together and is not too sticky. Not there yet. We're getting very close. All right, I'm gonna see how it feels. And a lot of cooking has to do, yeah, this feels about right. A lot of cooking has to do with going by sight and feel. But this is looking about right. I'm just going to make a nice ball with it, and I'll let it rest on the counter in the bowl here for just a few minutes while I get the board all ready to go. So we can roll it out. All right. It's a little on the wet side, but that's okay. I would rather have it a little on the wet side than too dry. So I'm just going to cut it in half. I'm only making 2 pasties. It's just my husband and I, and he has a low tolerance for leftovers more than one time. So we're not going to do that. I'm going to get a little of the flour. It's on the board, got a little on my hands. And then I'm just going to press it out and then roll it out the rest of the way. If you see little pieces of butter in there, perfect. And I'm just going to try and keep it in a circle because I'm going to fold it up after I get the filling in, and we want it to be like a half moon shape. So the traditional pasties up here in northern Michigan, they've usually got some kind of a ground meat or finely chopped up meat, as well as onions. Sometimes there's carrot. Some people use potato in their pasties, and some use rutabagas. And I like both. I'm actually going to be making some with rutabagas fairly soon. So if you're going to be making more than two, for sure you're going to want to double or triple the recipe for the crust. You can see lots of bits of butter down in there, and that is going to make it nice and flaky. All right, that looks pretty good. So I would say this is about the size of a small dinner plate. All right, I'm gonna just make sure that my pastry isn't too badly stuck to the counter. And then we're gonna start filling that first one. Okay, that's nice and loose. All right, in thinking about the order I want to put this in, and you could certainly do any order you want, I thought it would probably be good to have a layer of mashed potato in there first. So that is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to kind of spread it around, trying to keep it on the front half of this pasty. All right, that looks good. And the next thing I am going to do is put about a half cup of chopped up turkey onto the potatoes. And you can use dark meat, light meat, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to kind of push it down into the potatoes. I don't want a bunch of pockets of air in here. And let's see, I think I want to do some gravy at this point. And so this is nicely congealed gravy. I'm not going to put a whole lot because I don't want it being a really sloppy, messy pasty. Just a nice little layer. Okay. And I've got some stuffing here. And I'm going to add that. You can see it's starting to pile up high, and that's why you just don't want to overdo it. And I'm going to kind of push that down so that it's all making contact. And the last thing I'm going to do is add, get that back up here, add a little bit of cranberry sauce. This is homemade cranberry sauce. It's not terribly jellied like you get the stuff in the store. Homemade is always better, of course. All right, that's about enough of the cranberry. Again, just kind of press it down. All right, I'm going to wash my hands real quick and then come and we're going to fold this over and crimp the edges and put it over here on the baking sheet. All right, I think that's probably going to be it. You know what? A little salt and pepper. Always makes everything tastier. All right, over it goes. So I'm just kind of roll it so that the pastry meets at the front edges. And how it's done here in Michigan, it's not really crimped. I did bring that over the fork in case I needed to crimp, but it's just kind of rolled and closed up this way. Just kind of roll it and press. That is a full meal right there. Okay, I've got a small pan. Again, I'm only making 2 of these. And I've got a piece of parchment on there. So this first one is ready to go. Very carefully transfer it over to my pan. It barely fits, but it's on there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and then I'll come back. The oven is heating to 400 degrees, and I'm just going to cut a few vent holes in here. That's fine. And this is 1 egg that's been beaten with about a tablespoon of water. And we're just going to brush each of the pasties. So the locals call this pasties, and I suppose there's other ways to pronounce it. My grandmother, who was from England, made Cornish pasties, which is exactly the same thing. It just was a little bit more simple, I think. There was really only meat and onion in the ones that my grandmother made, but she called them pasties, not pasties, as they're called here in Michigan. And I suppose if I called them pasties here, when I went to order them from a deli counter or something, they'd probably look at me very funny, not knowing what it is that I was asking for. Or they just, flat out laugh at my pronunciation. So I grew up calling these pasties because that's what my grandmother called them. But this is a very typical European dish, and there's a lot of Polish and German people in this area. And so they brought it from Europe. I just realized that I forgot to salt and pepper this one, but it doesn't really matter. Whoever eats it wants more salt and pepper, they can add it. So I'm going to let the oven continue to heat to 400 degrees, and then I'll pop these in. Well, here they are going into the oven, and we'll see you in about 40 minutes. Here are the finished pasties. They look delicious. The whole kitchen smells delicious. And I'm going to let these cool down here for a little bit because they're just steaming hot out of the oven. And then it will be time for dinner. And I'll get back with you and let you know how we like them. Hello friends, well, it's the next day, and those Thanksgiving dinner pasties were delicious. And so now I'm going to go off camera and make the rest of the recipes, and I'll see you at the end. For a 6-serving size casserole of turkey tetrazzini, you will need 2 slices of bacon, chopped and cooked until it's nice and crispy. You're going to need 2 cups of turkey broth. This is home canned turkey broth. Chicken broth will also work. You'll also need a couple cups of sliced, diced, chopped, shredded, leftover turkey. You will need 1 cup of Monterey Jack shredded, 1 cup of Parmesan cheese shredded, and 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese. 1 large or 2 smaller cloves of garlic, well minced. And 1/3 cup of flour. Cook 12 ounces of spaghetti until not quite al dente. You want to leave it not quite ready yet because it will cook even more as it's baking in the casserole. About ½ pound of mushrooms. You'll need a cup of frozen peas. Well, 1 to 1.5, depends on how many you want in the dish. Okay, let's put it all together. I have 4 tablespoons of butter. I am heating it in this pan. Same one I used to cook the pasta in, so that is saving on a pot. After the butter has melted, add the mushrooms and cook and stir until the mushrooms start to soften a bit and look like they are cooked mostly through. I am cooking these on a fairly high heat because if you don't, mushrooms will tend to just kind of sit around and get soggy as they release their juices, so you want them pretty high. Okay, we're getting that kind of fogged up. There we go. So you can see that they're softening. Those mushrooms looking pretty good. We're not expecting them to brown. At this point, I'm going to add the garlic. This is 1 very large clove of garlic, but if you are using minced garlic from a jar, and that's totally fine, you can see that it's about a teaspoon. All right, I'm going to mix the garlic in and just kind of let that cook for a couple of minutes. Garlic will burn and turn bitter very quickly, so again, just a couple of minutes on that garlic. We're going to need a cup of white wine, and this is what I'm using. All right, add the white wine into the mushrooms. And make sure that there's a little bit on the side for the cook. All right, we're going to let this cook for several minutes, and we want that wine to reduce to about half. All right, that's about half reduced, and in goes the flour. Stir it around. It's going to make a roux, and be quick about it because you don't want there to be lumps. And let that just cook for a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, maybe half a minute. And let's get 2 cups of turkey broth or chicken broth. If by chance you did not want to use that wine I put in there earlier, you can always use a little extra turkey broth instead. All right, I'm going to stir this for a few and then get back to you. All right, I have reduced the heat on this, and it's going to take a minute or so to come to a boil. And when it starts to thicken up, then we'll move on to the next step, which is adding our cheeses. I've got an assistant over here who smells the cooking commencing. Hey, Miles. You smell dinner, don't ya? Yeah, Molly wants her dinner. All right. I think I'm just going to let this sit here on low for a moment. What? You want dinner? Yeah? Yeah? Dinner? Yeah? Dinner? Okay. I'm going to let this cook while I feed the dog. She's getting quite impatient. All right, dog is happily eating her dinner, so I'm back to my own chores at hand. I did want to mention that whenever I cook pasta, I always hold back 1 to 1/2 cup of pasta water, just in case I need some extra to thin out a sauce. And more times than not, I do need it. So that's an important consideration to take when you're about to drain your pasta. I decided to go ahead and add in my cream cheese while this is still thickening up. Cream cheese, even when you cut it into cubes as I have, can take a while to dissolve, so I figured we'll let it do both things at the same time. So I'm just going to come back and stir this every minute or two until all of that cream cheese is dissolved. Okay, it's bubbling nicely, and in goes the Parmesan. Give it a stir. Add the Monterey Jack. Give it a stir. I added a cup and a half of peas and the bacon and the drippings from the bacon. I figured that would make it taste even better. And I've stirred the turkey in. I have added the cooked spaghetti in, and I am very glad I kept that half cup of pasta water because I am going to add it. I've got the heat underneath the burner turned off, but I am just going to make sure this is all well incorporated and every bit of the spaghetti is down and mixed in with the sauce. Okay, there it is in the casserole dish, and I'm going to be baking it. And this is one of the larger of this type of Pyrex casserole dish. Again, this is 6 servings. And I'm just going to add some panko breadcrumbs. You can use plain breadcrumbs. You can use Italian style. And that's what this is. I figured Tetrazzini sounds like something of an Italian nature, so this would work well for it. Okay, it's going in the oven for 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. As soon as I got the meat off of this turkey, for use in all of the other recipes that I'm making on this video, I went ahead and got this stock pot with water and the rest of the turkey bones with a little bit of meat on it into the stock pot, and I am going to be using this to make the turkey soup. And there will be more in this stock pot once I have it all drained of everything than I will need for my turkey soup. But this is going to be simmering on very low all night long, and I'll use it to make soup tomorrow, and I'll be showing that to you, and we'll be having that for our lunch, and then the rest is going to be canned. I'll probably have way more than I'm going to need for the soup, so I will be canning and preserving the rest of it. Well, hello friends, it is now the next day, and it is time to get going on the turkey soup. The broth with all of the bones, it simmered all night long. It smells wonderful in the house. I'm sure it's going to be delicious. So I'm going to be straining all of that and getting my vegetables, my celery, carrots, onion, all chopped up. And then I will bring you back when we start to put the soup together. To this turkey soup that I am making for our dinner tonight, I am going to be chopping up 3 good-sized carrots. These are nice organic carrots that are grown locally, and I'm not even going to peel them. I'm just going to cut the ends off and chop them up and put them into the turkey soup. I'm wanting this to be a nice rustic kind of a soup, so I'm cutting the carrots about 1/2 inch thick. And they are going into the combination of about 4 cups of the broth from the stock pot and about another 4 cups of water, so it's going to be about 8 cups of liquid in the soup, plus I'll just add enough vegetables to make it a nice light broth with chunky vegetables in it. So I'm going to finish that up, and then I'll come back in and get the celery and the onions. And I've got 3 good stalks of celery here. I'm going to line them up, and also going to do these in about a 1/2 inch cut for that rustic soup. So I'm going to continue on and back with you shortly. I have a small onion. I'm going to peel that and dice that up. It's going to be in a smaller dice. I'm not using big pieces of onion, even though that would be rustic. I think it would just be a little bit too onion forward in flavor. There's the onions. Into the pot it goes. Okay, the broth with the vegetables is rapidly boiling. And I'm going to start adding some seasonings. I'm going to do a ½ teaspoon of black pepper. And a teaspoon of sea salt. All of these might be adjusted a little bit more later on, but it's what we're starting with. I always like to put a little poultry seasoning in anything that I'm doing with chicken or turkey. So this is ¼ teaspoon of poultry seasoning. All right, somebody is barking for her dinner over here. And I'm also going to put in 1 tablespoon of Better Than bouillon, and this is the seasoned roasted chicken. Yeah, I'm on it. Okay, that's kind of a rounded tablespoon. And we'll get that in there. And while the vegetables are softening up, I am going to feed this demanding dog. Yeah, you. This is Molly's dinner, by the way. This is what she's very definitely wanting to eat. It's chicken, beef liver, what? Yeah. It's chicken, beef liver, pork, and some other things. I have a video on it. You can take a look at that if you want to know what it is that I feed this puppy that very much enjoys her dinner. And while this is boiling and softening the vegetables, I'm going to go sort through the bones and the meat so that we can put that meat into this soup. I have decided to add some rice to this soup. So while the vegetables are softening, I just put in 1 cup of basmati rice. It has been rinsed of, well, whatever is on it, but we don't want all of the starchiness that was in the rice to be in the pot. So I have rinsed it first and then threw it in here. And I'm still working on sorting through the bones and the meat, but there will be plenty of meat coming off of those bones to go into the soup. I'm coming in and stirring this every now and then so that you don't end up with some clumped rice. I've got about 2 cups of meat separated from bones, and so we're going to still continue cooking. As soon as the rice is done, then we can add the meat, let it cook for a minute more just to heat through, and then it will be ready to eat. All right, final thing, once the rice is fully cooked, is to get the meat in there. This will be a nice, delicious, rustic turkey soup. This will only take a couple more minutes. It will be completely heated through and ready to eat. This one is kind of looking like she wants what you see on the corner of the counter here, but that's not for her. That's Mama's dinner. That's for Mama. Okay, now we're moving on to the 4th of our 5 things to do with turkey. And so here we go. I've got about 2 cups of roughly chopped turkey. I've got 2 large stalks of celery. I've got a can of coconut milk. And I've got a jar of red curry paste. I'm only going to be using about 3 tablespoons of that. I've got some baby carrots. I'll probably put about 1.5 cups of that in. I've got 2 cups of turkey stock, 1 onion that's going to be roughly chopped, about a tablespoon of Better Than bouillon seasoned roasted chicken. And then I've got some chard that came from my garden. It's frozen. I usually put baby bok choy, 3 heads of it, but I don't have any of that today. So all of those things that I just showed you are going to be going into this pot. What I will do is I will put everything in there at the same time except for the meat. That will be the very last thing that goes in as soon as everything else is cooked through. And for the very last thing that we will be needing is cooked rice. And I'm going to be using the remainder of this rice for tomorrow's dinner dish, which will be turkey and rice and broccoli casserole. So I'm going to be coming back as soon as everything is in the pot and ready to eat. This is our turkey curry. It is looking delicious. I am going to put about 1/2 to 1 cup of cooked rice in each bowl and then put a big scoop or two of this on top of it. It will be delish. This is 3/4 of a cup of cooked basmati rice, and the remainder is that delicious curry. Every ingredient that I showed you already was put into the pot, let it cook, and I've tasted it. This is absolutely delicious. Okay, here we go. I've got about 3 cups of cooked rice. Now when I did the turkey curry, I made extra rice so that I could use it in this recipe. So that's 3 cups of cooked rice. This is basmati rice. You can use any type of rice that you want. This is about 2 cups of cooked turkey, chopped up. And this is about 12 ounces of broccoli that I had in my freezer that needed to be used up. And this recipe is all about using things up, right? Getting it all out of the fridge. So I am going to add about 1 cup to 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. This is what I had. Normally I would use shredded cheddar in this, but I found I didn't have any when I started to make this recipe, and so I am just using, this is actually a Fiesta blend. So that is what I'm going to be using. I'll go ahead and add my seasonings here. This is 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Just sprinkle it in there. And where'd my spatula go? Here it is. Okay. I'm going to add in about 1/2 cup of sour cream. Get it all in there. And if you have leftover turkey gravy, this is probably about 1 3/4 cups. You can use a can of cream of mushroom soup in here. You can use a can of cream of chicken. I've got this gravy left over, so absolutely in it goes. And I'm gonna need about 1/2 cup of milk. Not fun, just throw it all in. What the heck. And I've got 2 cups of turkey broth that I made last Thanksgiving and canned it, so I'm going to use that. I should have gotten that open first, but let me pause and do that. And in it goes. You can use 2 cups of chicken broth, whatever floats your boat. Well, I don't know what happened with my camera, but apparently it turned off while I was mixing this casserole together. But you know what? That's how technology deals with it sometimes. So first I put in 3 cups of already cooked rice. You can use either basmati, jasmine, whatever rice you like. That's what you can put in here. Even if it's like a wild rice, brown rice kind of a blend. 3 cups cooked. And I had cooked extra rice yesterday when I made the turkey curry dish, and so that I would have it for this dish today. So on top of the rice, I added 2 cups of leftover chopped up turkey and about 12 ounces of the frozen broccoli that I had in the freezer. It needed to be used up. I added about 2 cups of gravy, leftover gravy from Thanksgiving dinner. And you can use a can of soup instead, cream of mushroom soup, cream of chicken soup, cream of celery soup, whatever you want, you can use in this dish. I also added about 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. That was Fiesta blend, but again, normally you would use shredded cheddar in this, but I didn't have any, so I just used what I had on hand. 1/2 cup of sour cream and 1/2 cup of milk. And I added 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And I added 2 cups of homemade turkey broth. You can use homemade chicken broth, whatever you want to use. Anyway, that's pretty much it. And you mix it up well. You don't want any chunks of anything to sort of be all in one corner in your dish. So this is going to go into a greased 13 by 9 pan. So I'm going to come back in a moment and get it into the pan. All right, essentially I'm just going to pour this into the pan. Now I'm going to be back on camera in a moment here and explain why you are not looking at a greased 13 by 9 pan. It is a 13 by 9 pan, but ooh, it's getting ready to overflow. But I did not grease it, and I'll tell you in just a minute here why that is. So just kind of spread it around in your pan. We'll assume that it is a greased 13 by 9 pan, and just kind of try to get everything distributed evenly, the liquid, the solid. All the way. All right, that looks pretty good. The last thing that I am going to do, and you don't need to do it, but I think it would be nice, and I am going to just add some panko breadcrumbs to this. You don't absolutely have to have it, but I think it would be a nice addition. You can use plain, you can use Italian seasoned panko breadcrumbs, and that's what this is. If you need to be gluten-free, you can use some gluten-free breadcrumbs, or just crush up some crispy rice cereal. Makes a great topping. So I'm going to turn the camera around here and explain what is going to happen with this next. So normally what I would do is put it in the oven, a preheated oven, 350 degrees, and bake that for 35 to 45 minutes. You want it to be golden on top and bubbly throughout. But I'm not doing that today because we're really turkeyed out. And I'm going to put this one in the freezer. That's why it's in the foil right now. So I'm going to put it in the freezer and let it freeze that way, and then I will take it out of the pan in the foil and properly wrap it so it's nice and secure and will stay fresh, frozen in the refrigerator until we are in the mood for turkey again. So instead of that for our dinner tonight, we're going with burgers. We just can't eat another meal with turkey. So I'm sure you may be there at this point in time, but that's the way it is. So thank you for joining me in my kitchen. Thank you for joining my channel, Cook from the Past. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so if you enjoyed the videos, and make sure that you hit that thumbs up button to like it. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.